Hey guys, it's been a little while since I've done a Q&A video, so I posted up a thread today. It's May 11th, 2017. I'm going to go ahead and answer that thread now. It looks like we got some good questions, so let's see what we have here. Depending on your placement in the first show, do you have any other shows on your radar for this year? If so, which ones? Yeah, there's another show the next weekend, actually after the weekend right afterwards, that I've considered. I'm not sure. Kind of depends on, well, I mean, I guess how I place, but more so just trying to peak for two shows because I really don't want to, have any problems peaking for the first show or have to go easy on it and ruin my chances there. So I'm just going to do it, and then if I end up doing the second show, then I will. Thoughts on 5-HTP, and they also said GABA. All right, so 5-HTP is going to help with serotonin levels, and GABA is obviously going to help with GABA levels. Now, as far as GABA goes, it's not very good at crossing the blood-brain barrier, so as far as supplementing with it, I'd rather see someone supplement with theanine, and it's a little bit better at doing that, and you'll get GABA levels will go up. So keep that in mind. As far as what they do, in simple terms, I mean, 5-HTP, like I said, it's going to help with serotonin. Serotonin is just going to help with overall mood, combat depression, maybe perception towards situations, things like that. Whereas GABA is more of a calming. Serotonin is definitely calming, but GABA is also very calming. Normally, people with lower GABA levels will have anxiety and things like that. So when combined, the two together are pretty good. As far as using them, I mean, yeah, it depends on the person if they really need them or not. I wouldn't want to overproduce serotonin and GABA on a constant basis. If it's a matter of doing it every once in a while, like for example, right now in my prep, my serotonin levels, I don't really have anything to produce serotonin. Like I'm not having carbohydrates. I've always naturally had lower serotonin levels. I was on depression medication, things like that when I was younger. And, so obviously like serotonin at night, trying to calm me down, trying to go to sleep. During the day, the levels are kind of lousy. So I will use it at night. I have been most nights except for my refeeds, and I don't use it because I have the carbohydrates. So but 200 milligrams of 5-HTP there normally does the trick. You could go up to 300, and 100 is going to have an effect on a lot of people as well. And then as far as like the theanine goes, I'll have a lot of people use that with different stimulant-based fat-burning stacks just to combat anxiety and smooth them out, if you will. Or you could use it at night, or just to help the mind racing kind of calm that down, or just during the day as a general anxiety aid. But again, unless someone's deficient and we can pinpoint that, then I would try not to rely on them all the time and overproduce GABA and serotonin. Would like your ethical opinion on bikini athletes using PEDs. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're talking about. I really don't see any reason that any bikini girl needs to use an anabolic of any sort. That's ridiculous. Just take more time. I would never suggest that. I think that's ridiculous. As far as like fat burning PEDs go, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's terrible. It's not really something that I do with folks. I just don't. The level of leanness that's needed, it is hard for some girls to attain. Don't get me wrong. It's very difficult. They have to work really hard, but I just don't think that, especially stuff like thyroid meds, I would really steer clear of that. Something like clenbuterol, albuterol, ephedrine, I'm not going to freak out about it. I don't think it's terrible. Most girls don't need it really, but like thyroid especially, I think that's ridiculous, and it's a slippery slope for a lot of them because you always hear the horror stories about these 800 calorie 12 16 week diets with 100 micrograms of T3 and so on and so forth, and that's obviously a recipe for disaster. When planning exogenous insulin use for a client, do you prefer to work as a method for blood glucose control with high carbohydrate intakes, or as a hypertrophy tool, or both? Well, I would never rely on it as just simply to control blood sugar because someone's slamming carbs. I mean, you should be insulin sensitive enough to control blood sugar on your own. Maybe use things like glucose disposal agents and stuff to kind of aid in that. But if you have to rely on insulin just to control it, chances are you're not insulin sensitive enough to begin with for producing your own insulin, and you are probably going to end up fat with a lot of exogenous insulin anyhow. So I think that's getting carried away, not relying on it. I mean, as a tool, it's great. Hypertrophy tool, yeah, that would be a better way to state it, I think, and using it strategically and trying to not abuse it, remain insulin sensitive, not have to constantly drive up the dose because you require more and more and more for the same carbohydrate intake. So let's see. Doc has me on 100 milligrams of SIP a week, 25 milligrams of Aromasin a day. These doses bring me to just above normal testosterone levels and mid-normal estrogen ranges. My question, do you think long-term AI use, what I'm prescribed, can be detrimental to my health? Would it be wise to talk to my doctor about possibly switching to Nolvadex and Dem for longevity and health's sake? Bloods always come back great. Doctor's happy. I'm a super aromatizer, as you can tell by my dosage compared to where my actual estrogen levels are with that dose. So I'm not sure if Nova Dem would be enough. Any input would be awesome, and I can send you blood work. He says, well, I looked at the blood work. Yeah, I mean, the levels are normal. That is a lot of Aromasin for 100 milligrams of Cypionate. That's pretty crazy. But I mean, if you aromatize it heavily, then it is what it is. I mean, you could try the other method, and obviously you risk having high estrogen, but the Nolvadex will kind of protect you from at least like the breast glands swelling up and things like that. So, you'd be safe. But I would maybe make it a subtle transition. You're going to have to talk to him about it, obviously, if it's a prescription thing, but, slowly knocking the dose down and adding Nolvadex and then getting rid of the Aromasin completely and adding Dem. With the Dem, I mean, I think that you actually get a benefit from a lot higher dose. People do 400, 500, 600 milligrams and keep getting benefit. I've seen that work. I know my doctor talks about that and using really high doses, so that could be useful. As far as longevity goes, I mean, yeah, the biggest thing I guess I would worry about is probably like lipid profile. Aromasin's not as bad as Arimidex when it comes to that, but it still might be a concern long term. Aromasin's a suicide inhibitor, so it's a little bit different than Arimidex, which is a aromatase inhibitor. I'm not sure if, long term, it's going to be a bad idea to have the suicide inhibitor in there constantly. It does alter estrogen production a little differently than just stopping aromatization. So maybe just talk to him about it and look like, hey, I'm going to be on this forever. Do you think that's possible to transition? All right. Here's one. I won't read the whole thing because it's really long, but basically he asks if it's possible to overdo omega-3s and throw off the ratio of arachidonic acid to omega-3s, or EPA specifically. And he cites an article, and he actually had some blood work done showing this. So yeah, it's possible. I can't say that I've ever actually seen it ever. But I mean, it's surely possible. Inflammation is definitely, there's a lot of protective processes that inflammation's involved in. So arachidonic acid being super low and inflammatory blunting EPA DHA being really high potentially cause an issue with those inflammatory processes, and obviously muscle growth too. So Yeah, it's in this case, absolutely. I mean, if it's on paper, I mean, if you had the blood done, the labs done, and it shows that the ratio is way off, then I would certainly look at what you're doing. But I mean, I don't know if it mentions the dose of omega-3 specifically, but my thought is if your dose of omega-3 isn't super high, he says something about a gram a day or something, so it's a few fish oils, 3 or 4. Then maybe look at why you don't have enough arachidonic acid and maybe get more of that first versus lowering omega-3s. But I mean, like I said, ratio could go either way. You could lower it, but it's the thing with a lot of eating a lot of meat and things like that. Like a lot of the us bodybuilders are going to do, we're going to have a lot of arachidonic acid anyhow. So, yep, the ratio is definitely important. But like I said, if you have the labs, then I would definitely work on fixing that in one of the two ways. In a bulking massing phase, it's natural for water weight and excessive water to increase from higher carbohydrates and calories and PEDs if the excess water doesn't negatively affect performance in the gym, and you can overlook how uncomfortable it is carrying that weight around. Would you be worried about carrying around 10 to 15 extra pounds of water, thinking health or potential negative health effects? I really, honestly, unless you're a really big person, you shouldn't be carrying 15 pounds of water. You really shouldn't. If you're really fat, then you're going to carry 15 pounds. You're going to carry more water because the fat cells are going to carry water. But I mean, a lot of the carbohydrates are going to pull the water intramuscular too. I mean, you're going to have some subcutaneous water from that and the PEDs and inflammation and things like that. But 10 to 15 pounds, I really don't think so. Maybe there's some people that will have that, but they shouldn't. They should really evaluate why they have that much water. And some people obviously hold water naturally more so than others. And if they're really big, like I said, it's going to make a difference and more space. But health-wise, yeah, I mean, blood pressure obviously is going to be the biggest one. It's just a really big burden on your kidneys trying to rid itself and keep water balance all the time. So if you're holding that much water, I would probably figure out why and address it because, yeah, it's not good. Especially you mentioned being uncomfortable. Yeah, that's too much water retention. How do you fight GERD, acid reflux, and indigestion while on cyclotren? Currently using aloe juice, apple cider vinegar, digestive enzymes, betaine, turmeric, and now Zantac. Thanks. It might be something temporarily that you're just going to have to deal with. You're doing all the things right as far as acidity goes. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of antacid medications and even over-the-counter stuff just because of the rebound that they produce. Using them long-term, your body's going to have a rebound effect, and it's going to start overproducing. Short-term, I mean, if you really need it, I guess it's not a huge deal like in this situation, but you might just have to deal with it. I don't know how bad it is, but I may look at just acidity of foods you're eating. Try to possibly get rid of, just lower the acidity of the foods and raise alkalinity a little bit. Your body's going to regulate a lot of the overall alkalinity and acidity of your body, of your blood in your body in general, but your stomach, you can regulate that some. You could use like diet sodas or bicarbonated like sodas, things like that are going to help. You mentioned betaine. I probably wouldn't use betaine just because it's basically stomach acid, and if you already have GERD, then I'd probably get rid of that. That alone might help, to be honest. So that would be my take on it. Last one. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, we have two more. What is your knowledge on MK677? I'm looking to learn about trying to find trusted information, just the basics like what it does, how much to take, side effects, etc. There's a ton of information on it out there, and we actually did a podcast that included information on this at least a couple times, I think. I'm sure it's in the peptide podcast, but it's basically a GH secretagogue, and it's a long-acting one, and it's taken orally. It's really popular because it's oral and it acts it stays in the system a long time. Doesn't have to be administered constantly like a lot of the peptides, and it's potent, so it really does a good job. Water retention's a typical side effect. Hunger, just because it's a ghrelin, it's going to raise ghrelin levels. So, I mean, those are your two main ones. The water retention's a little much for a lot of people. Some people don't like it just because there's too much water retention. So they don't use it for that reason. You just basically it would be starting with a lower dose. People dose it anywhere. I've seen up to 50 milligrams. I mean, 25 is a pretty standard dose. You could start as low as 10 if it's a good product. I mean, it's still going to work. Start low. Might make you a little tired, so try it at night just because of the growth hormone release. But again, it's so long acting that it's pretty much in your system all the time. So once a day dosing, whenever, it's going to pretty much do it. If you have more questions, I would just go to the Beast Fitness Radio webpage. You can Google it and look for the peptide episode, and we talk about it in there in a lot more depth. So I would try that. I have one more question here. Let me pull it up. It's in my email, so just one second. Let's see. All right. Here it is. Two questions, actually. So, first, do you have any recommendations for plane travel during prep to minimize digestive issues, other issues people have, etc.? I'm flying out Thursday early morning, coming back at 1 a.m. Mondays. So if you can answer that one before Thursday, I'd be much obliged. Something I've been curious about in general, though. I don't know if I answered this in time. I don't think so. Sorry. But real quick, plane travel, water retention is normally an issue with that. If people get nauseous, it might affect their digestion. But as far as the water goes, that's normally the main one. I just tell people to stay hydrated. You're going to be the annoying person that gets up and pisses a bunch before you get in the plane. But normally the dehydration, the swelling, and things like that, you notice a lot more when you get there. So I like to hydrate right before you get on the plane. It's, going to the bathroom a bunch isn't going to catch up with you till probably after you get off the plane. Well, it depends on how long the flight is, obviously, but that's what I like to do. And if you're really hydrating well, you could take an OTC diuretic, something like Project AD's H2O Remove or MHP Expel, anything like that, and that's going to help. But your water needs to be high when you're doing that. And then you shouldn't have a lot of digestive issues if you are well hydrated. Eat slowly, chew good, all that good stuff. Second question regarding types of dietary fiber, which you may have talked about before, soluble versus insoluble, when to know if you're getting too much or too little of one. Are they like omega-6, omega-3? Is ideal balance? It varies based on individual and digestive system. Also, I think it would be cool to have a podcast episode on bowel movements, covering issues the general public run into, food intolerances, and people run into during prep. I know you guys have done digestive stuff, but I just thought that would be cool. I actually did a whole entire article on different types of fiber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tag you in this article, and it will help you out, the differences. Yeah, I think this is a big thing. People just throw some random fiber supplement at it, like a psyllium husk, for example, when they might not really need psyllium husk. You need to know if you're adding fiber to your diet, do you need soluble or insoluble? A lot of the time I'll just suggest a mixed supplement that has both, just because it's pretty much fail-proof at that point, unless I know specifically that they have something going on. For example, if their bowels are really, really hard, they're having a hard time going to the restroom, they probably need more soluble fiber to pull moisture in and soften it up. If they're really constipated or they're watery bowels, probably need more insoluble fiber, which does not digest at all. That's going to be like cellulose and things like that. There's a vegetable cellulose powder that I'll recommend to a lot of people in that case. Ratio-wise, definitely. I mean, normally ratio in foods is pretty good, like vegetables, but if you notice, you're having one of those two things, then you can pretty much pinpoint which fiber you need more of, and then I'll recommend that. But I'll tag you in that article, and that should be helpful to you. So that's it, guys. We're in about 20 minutes here, not too bad. I appreciate you listening, and we'll try to do another one again pretty soon. That's it.